If you're milling your own flour, you don't need a special baking project every time you use it. This apple crisp is one of the ways I use fresh flour in a really normal, everyday way. I'm Anya with Prepare and Nourish, and today I'm making an apple crisp with fresh milled flour. I'm starting with the crumble topping. I'm using a blend of kamut and hard white wheat berries. Kamut adds a slightly buttery flavor, and hard white keeps it mild. But honestly, this recipe is forgiving enough that you can adjust based on what you have. I love this recipe and I make it often because it works for regular family meals and it also works when we have people over. To the flour, I'll add brown sugar and cinnamon and whisk all of that together first so that the cinnamon is evenly distributed. With fresh milled flour, you don't need to overthink this step. This isn't a dough, it's more of a loose mixture, so we're not trying to develop gluten or get anything smooth. The flour is really just here to help bind the topping and give it some structure once it bakes. Next, I'll cut in the butter. The butter needs to be cold here. That's what creates those crumbly pieces that melt in the oven and give you a crisp topping instead of something soft or cakey. I'm just using a fork, but a pastry cutter would probably be ideal here. And you'll notice I'm not aiming for uniform crumbs. Some larger pieces, some smaller ones. That's exactly what you want. If it looks a little uneven, that's a good sign. Once the butter is worked in, I'll stir in the oats. The oats add texture and help the topping hold up as it bakes, especially when you're using fresh milled flour. Sprouted oats work really well here, but use what you have. Next, we'll start working on the filling. I'm using about 8 medium apples. I don't get too particular about the variety. Use what you have. What I care more about is how they're cut. I like them fairly chunky so they soften but don't completely fall apart. Peeling is also totally optional. I had some time, so I peeled the apples today, but I've often made this with the peel, and personally, I love the extra texture. It's good either way, and if you are peeling them, make sure you save the peels to make homemade apple cider vinegar, and the link to that recipe will be in the caption. This is one of those recipes where fresh milled flour really shines because you're not relying on it for structure. You're not developing gluten or worrying about the rise. It's just doing a supportive job in the background, all while contributing some protein and minerals from the whole grain. Everything for the filling goes straight into the baking dish. Next, I'll toss all of that with a little maple syrup, vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg, and a pinch of salt to balance it all out. I also like to coat this filling with a few spoonfuls of flour. The flour here helps thicken the juices as the apples bake. And because it's fresh milled flour, it adds more substance without making the filling heavy or pasty. I'll stir everything together right in the dish until the apples are evenly coated. One of the reasons I like this recipe so much is that apple crisp is very forgiving. You don't have to be precise with your apples. Your cuts don't have to be perfect, and it still turns out really well. That makes it a great recipe if you're newer to baking with fresh milled flour. Then I add the topping evenly over the apples. I don't press it down, just let it sit naturally on top and let the heat do its thing. The crisp bakes at 350 degrees for about 45 minutes. What I'm looking for here is a golden topping and bubbling around the edges. That bubbling tells you the apples are fully cooked and the filling has thickened. If your apples were cut a little larger or smaller, that's okay. Just adjust the baking time. Once it comes out of the oven, I let it rest for a few minutes. It'll still be warm, but the filling will set up slightly so it's easier to serve. This apple crisp is good warm at room temperature or cold. And if you want to add vanilla ice cream, it pairs really well. Another reason I rely on this recipe is that it works well with planning ahead. You can assemble it the day before and bake it when you're ready, or bake it fully and freeze it for later. That makes it especially helpful when you're cooking for other people or trying to think ahead for the week. This apple crisp is one of those recipes that earns its place in regular dessert rotation. It's flexible, forgiving, and made with ingredients that feel good to serve. If you'd like the full recipe with exact measurements, make ahead tips, and freezing instructions, you'll find it on my website at prepareandnourish.com. And if you enjoy this kind of real food cooking, I'd love for you to subscribe here on YouTube so you don't miss future recipes. Eat well, be nourished, and I'll see you in the next one.